Who are you and how did you find yourself here talking with me today?
Hey, Patrick. So I'm Tarik Delic. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Octa Space. My main job is jack of all trades, master of none. No, just kidding. Uh, no, I take day-to-day care of actual product development. So my full core focus is looking at what areas we can expand in terms of diversifying our product product range, looking at where we can increase uptake of actual users, because we're a very kind of product centric project. What that means is we really do invest in tech, and we look at creating robust products that users will actually use and not just use but love and keep coming back and recommend to everyone else. So that's kind of my day to day. Obviously, I do a lot of other stuff that's admin work associated with crypto projects. But yeah, that's an extremely demanding job. You've managed communities, you manage developers, and then you manage outside relationships. But how I got introduced to you, actually, you know what, with Cliff, I think you actually mentioned once on a live stream from Dynex, and suggested we could. I think I kind of popped into the chat and said, "Hey, I'm here. Yeah, sure. Let's sync up and let's find some time to talk." So here I am.
It was pretty cool how it all came together too. For anyone who's watching this now who was there in the live stream, they actually got to see our first introduction. So it's really fascinating. Clifford, or AKA Yeti, he's been a big fan of what you guys are building out. And
Mm,
just to give kind of insight for anyone who is watching right now, Octa Space is a rendering platform. It's a DePin project. And I know you guys do more than rendering, but I'll let you guys
yes.
talk about that. Um, yeah, you guys have a very powerful network of GPUs, which you can dedicate towards any of the different resources or different needs that your clients need. I don't know if you could touch on that and talk about some of the cool things you have currently live.
Absolutely. So, as you rightly pointed out, we have a rendering platform. So let's actually go back to this point. So when we talk about DeepIn, we don't just have a GPU network. So, and when we talk about even GPU, I don't even like the dimension of just GPU, because for us, nodes, we call them nodes, are machines. We actually utilize the entire resource pool of the machine. So we see equality in terms of necessity, not just GPU but CPU only. Let's say CPU as well, RAM, etc. Why I mention that is as an example. Um, while the focus on GPU quality is important, you can't have other components that are going to bottleneck it. And depending on workloads that you have, so whether that's rendering, whether that's AI training, regardless, you need a lot of throughput for some of that. So our node software that people install, and the way it works is people provide their own hardware. So none of the hardware that's in our platform is owned by us and operated by us, nor is it even controlled in terms of pricing. All that is done directly by users themselves, so those who provide the actual hardware. Um, so going back to that point, so obviously there's that foundational level where you have the hardware, right? But then the next level above that is now you need to have platforms that use that hardware. So what do we have? Um, and so going back to the question of what do you have is we have a marketplace where people can launch applications, so certain client applications to run certain workloads. So let's say a perfect example is AI training. So let's say you want to run, Jupyter Labs to do AI inference. You can find some nodes in marketplace that, and then we can do some demos as well to demonstrate some of that. I think it would be great for your audience to see that, right? But you could do, okay, AI inference, and you're going to have the right hardware there, or you could have rendering. So for rendering, for example, I mentioned to you how important the rest of the gear is. So um, rendering doesn't just use GPUs. It uses a lot of CPUs to do a compiling of shaders, polygons, geometry, lighting, and so on. And a lot of that then goes and gets fed to the GPU. But what also matters is the RAM, because a lot of that, obviously, once it's doing that compiling, goes into the RAM and then gets fed into the VRAM of the GPUs. So that's why it's important that you have quality of nodes, not just as I said, if you're going to have a 4090 pad with a Celeron and 8 gigs of RAM, that's not going to work. It just won't be used. It'll fail to do any jobs. And that's why we always stress it's not quantity. I often see in the market, and feel free to jump in, by the way, Patrick. I do talk a lot. I apologize. I often go on a monologue. I try and avoid it, but if you want some space to talk, jump in at any
You're
point.
good. Finish the thought, and then I got something I want to ask you.
Absolutely. But yeah. I'm trying to remember where I got stuck. Um,
That's all right.
yeah.
This will be good because I think my question will actually play off of what you were just talking about. So I'll re-spark it.
What I was mentioning is I often see projects use the number of GPUs as a flex, and for us, that doesn't mean anything. Look, in realistic terms, you could have 10,000 GTX 1060s. It doesn't mean anything. It won't do anything, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got to have the right hardware for the job, not the no quantity means nothing. It's the quality that matters. That was my point.
I love that, and that plays into what I was gonna ask you because while you were talking, I was thinking about how so many different, proof of work-esque networks, end up with ASICs, just riddling it and making it impossible
Mhm.
for normal people to do any kind of mining and any kind of, like, additional services towards the network. So, would what you're describing, would that kind of, rule out any ASICs from popping up for
Well, so you
OctaSpace specifically? Because you need more than just one specific use case?
so there's difference, right? We have a proof of work blockchain, and I know we can actually cover some of all the intricacies of all the parts. So, all right. So our foundational infrastructure a bit below is the blockchain, but the blockchain is primarily there to serve a purpose as for transaction processing. So when you're so payment of services in that is in native Octa. And then so when you're doing any payments or transferring to use, all that goes through the blockchain in blocks, right? And proof of work miners. But our blockchain is ETH hash based, right? So it's pretty much the same as Ethereum was back in the proof of work days, and where miners validate, and it is ASIC riddled in terms of the blockchain. So if you're asking whether you can mine through with a GPU, yes. Will it be worth it? No. It's ASICs mostly there. Where but and there's a silver line. The marketplace and the nodes, this is a great opportunity for those that do have GPUs, can actually provide those GPUs as nodes on ours for other people to rent them out and actually use them for something else. Um, or we even support people who might want to do, let's say you might be doing some spec mining. You can actually spin up your rig. Just it's important that it has the right combination of hardware, so if it has plenty of RAM and so on. But you could provide it as a node where it's actually doing some mining, and somebody on our marketplace could rent it out. It pauses that mining. It pauses mining whatever it was doing, whether you're running Hive OS or whatever. It starts running our software during rental, and then it continue after that session stops, it continues mining whatever you set it up to do. So theoretically, you could do that too. So there's actually kind of a way you could utilize GPUs even to this day. So whether you're doing spec mining of some other project, or there are plenty of other projects that you can mine with GPUs. So there is a potential benefit of that. But the actual blockchain side of things is ASIC really dominated. So
Yeah, I should have differentiated because I know that there's like two different parts to that question. So I should have definitely differentiated it. But while we're talking about the marketplace as a whole, I would love if you could give a demo to the audience and kind of showcase what it looks like, the UX, the UI, and then like how
mhm.
people work on it. We'll save the fun kind of tokenomics and fun side of everything for the end so people stick around and watch through.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So I'm giving you a bit of an alpha here because this marketplace I'm showing you right now is a revamped one. It's so we have an old marketplace. The old marketplace was more sort of function versus form. Now we have a both function versus form as well as expansion of functionality. But let me share the marketplace with you first. The new one. So this is it. I took a quick glance, so I'll refresh it so you can see. And what we've done is we've created. I think you may have seen some similar. Actually, there are others that are for such as a cache that have a similar kind of concept to this. But you have choice of different apps you can actually load. I don't know if some of you even saw our Twitter feed. We're actually looking at even being able to launch games from the marketplace, so you can actually have games here. And we have done a proof of work or a proof of concept, which we demoed actually on our website, on our Twitter. There you go. So we actually did a tech demo where we actually launched a game. But yeah, we're working on expanding the number of apps that are available here. So, but I think I gave one here where you can, let's say, you can use Jupyter Lab here for AI inference. So once you selected an app, you can then you're presented with a list of GPUs. These are all, so what you're seeing right now here are nodes. So these are nodes that are provided by users in I'll actually show you the actual platform where that's also managed as well, where users actually have accounts. They can see both, their spend, but also an area where people can actually manage their own nodes that they have. But these are the nodes that are available in the marketplace, and you can filter based on USD or based on Octa, but you're still paying on Octa, but it gives you the USD equivalent. But we can see here filtering and what we often have. So let's say in this case of Jupyter Lab, we have an AI score, and we can sort by lowest or highest, and we can actually see it here. If I select AI score, we can actually see, okay, I have, this one, which has the highest AI score. It's got 8 RTX A5000s, 24 gigabytes. And if I go back to actually, if I go into the hardware, you can actually see the actual configuration as well. So you can see this is a Threadripper Pro. It has 252 gigabytes of RAM. So that's quite a beefy machine, right?
Yeah, I'm noticing as well as you're going through all this that the pricing in USD per hour and Octa per hour is different for each node. Could you
Right.
kind of dive into how that's determined?
Absolutely. Well, basically, I'll have to show you the cube. So let me go back. So I'll share this tab. So this is a separate platform called the cube, where people actually can provide nodes. So this is our test one that we have, and I have a test one here, Tarik node. It's offline, but what I can show you is it shows you where it is, what's the actual hardware configuration. Now, if I go and you can see that the actual performance, its actual scoring. If I go into configuration here, I can here set my pricing. So here I am now as a node provider. I've created, I have a node. I've installed the node software to run. And then now I can say, okay, this is my base price. So when somebody wants to rent it in dollars, or I can set it into Octa, or I can set it to dollars. Depending, if I set it into dollars, what it will do is on the marketplace, it will charge the equivalent in Octa. So it still charges in Octa, but what this enables it to do is based on fluctuations in the market, because Octa value, right, it can change depending on whatever, whether it's speculative or whether people are buying Octa to use for services. Price could go up, price could go down. So often setting it, kind of pinning it to a USD equivalent, kind of provides that consistency to actual end users who are going to rent the hardware. So here I can set the base price. So what this will, and this is often the base price is primarily used for rendering machines mostly, but it's also used for others. But rendering is charged just base price. We don't charge the storage and traffic. But you can see here, okay, I've set 50 cents per hour. So when you rent my machine, your per hour is 50 cents. And then I could say, okay, storage, I could set to 0. I could set it to 0.0, whatever, a tiny amount if I wanted to, or 0.01. There we go. Let's say, will that work? No? Oh, 0.1.
1 second minimums.
Hold on. I think, is it traffic is less? We can do traffic much less. Oh, that is to that. So that needs to change, but it was less. So this might be a bug. But basically, I can set the pricing here. So it's 1 cent per gigabyte. I can allocate. Often when a user rents a machine, they allocate how much. Um, mm, mm, excuse me. Storage they want. That's a lot of talking. We want. And so let's say I'm renting. I want 500 gigabytes. because I'm going to run massive, LLM models that need a lot of space and data sets and so on. You need a lot of space. So, it's going to be 500 gigabytes times 0.01 cent. But often, we encourage you not to really charge for storage if you can avoid it, or traffic. Traffic is mostly used for VPN. So this is how much it's going to cost per gigabyte for VPN, because our VPN is also pay as you go. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that
But
was a good breakdown with everything.
earnings, how many a user can see their earnings here, and this is just for node providers. But I can see here, okay, these are my service sessions. So let's say, okay, my account, and I can see which service sessions I ran, what type of service they were, how much I spent for each one, what traffic it was, etc., etc. I can see personal details. There's also staking here. We actually have a link to the actual render platform from here too, because also users can use this because they can here top up their balance. So it doesn't matter that's shown because they can't do much about it.
I said they're gonna start donating some
Well,
Octa.
you can feel free to donate anytime. Uh, so yeah, that's this is just the dashboard. There's a lot more to this in background. If we go to actual staking, billing, and idle jobs, you can do a lot here. But this is your kind of command and control center. But if we go back to the marketplace, now what we are now seeing is this is what we're seeing is where users, if we go back to the USD price, right? This for example, node provider, this is node ID 169. He set a base price of 20-ish cents per hour to rent his node, right? And the top right hand corner, what you're seeing here, the green one, is the actual reliability. We really encourage users, if you're going to provide a node, they need to be dedicated, because the longer it's online, the more reliability score grows, right? And that takes quite a few weeks to actually get up to 100%. And why that's important is, let's say you're running AI inference, those can last for days, right? You want a session that's going, last thing you need is a low reliability node that's going to go offline while you're in the middle of that. You've lost your work, you've lost this. It needs high reliability. And so this reliability scores really matters. Actually, did we rent that node? We didn't, did we? So when we started, we can go back to, so let's going back to kind of renting for Jupyter Lab. So let's go with that one that has a higher AI score, which was that one. And again, for this type of hardware, it still isn't expensive. $2.50 an hour, for that sort of machine, it really isn't a lot. But again, we don't control pricing. But here, I'm looking at this where you can see, we've got a selected app. I can actually change the app if I wanted to at this stage by clicking this button, and it will actually show, go back to this, what it is, right? It's a little actually pop up, and I can change the apps. And I could go back here, and I'll now allocate the space. And if you remember, there's that storage price that we had. And so whether it's 0.01 cents and so on, it'll actually tell you this guy, for example, this node provider hasn't set any pricing for storage. So it's not going to charge us anything. So all we're really paying is this base price. And there is a 0.08 octa for traffic per gigabyte. So let's select that, and we click on deploy. And now we can see that this is going to now deploy the actual PyTorch lab that we'll be able to then open up and then start, let's say AI inference. Let's see if it's ready. It is. Hold on. So I've just clicked that, and it's starting. Right. And so now I can do so on, and I can load up, and if I type in NVIDIA SMI, I can now see all those GPUs are available, to use to, let's say, train AI. Right. So if I go back to the, oops, sorry, misclicked. Let me go back to sharing. My bad. Let me share. I'll share the window because it'll be easier since I'm flicking a lot. So, but what we can do, you can do other things, right? You can do things like use Invoke AI, which is actually quite great. It's actually quite a lot better than Stable Diffusion to do image generation, because you also have a lot of refinement you can do with workflows. You can actually, do in painting and remove certain images or certain parts of an image and regenerate that. You can do a lot. So and it's great because it also comes a lot with many pre-downloaded models, so you can download them, and so there is a lot,
Cool.
and we're adding more and more apps to this as we go. Again, this
I
marketplace
think
hasn't been officially launched, but it works. It does work, but we're not officially.
it hasn't been pushed
We're
live
still
yet.
well, it is live, but it's not opened up to everyone to use yet because we're still doing some refinements to it. We're doing some updates. There's not many left. We're nearly there actually, but there's a few things to take care of. For example, we've been the issue is because we have. I mean, for example, we have VPN nodes here. Actually, you can see, so you can actually filter by traffic price. You can actually select by country. So this is if you want to download certain configurations, you can actually have let's say you can actually download like WireGuard. We do have our own desktop app, but if you want to use your own custom ones, such as WireGuard, OpenVPN, V-Ray, Shadows, Hoax, you can actually download the config file and add it into that, and it will connect. And it remains, you're not using anything that's built by someone else. So you can
The
download.
VPN is good. I think a lot of users are gonna love that because I know almost everyone in crypto Web3 uses a VPN at some point. So that's a cool.
A lot of users. We already have a lot of users of VPN. VPN is one of our most popular services, and rendering. Rendering and VPN are one of our most popular services. But
I saw Dynex in the marketplace. Can we see the pricing that they have on theirs? I'm just
it's
curious about this.
not pricing per the app. It's just
Yeah.
pricing per node. So whatever I select here, it's always going to give me the nodes. The point is, you can run any app. It's the nodes that are priced up. It's up to you whether you want to pay that price. I mean, there are cheaper nodes. Actually, that's the cheapest right now is, with no GPUs, or you have a 2 RTX 3070 with 4 cents an hour. There's a 3080s there. We also support, AMD architecture. You can actually even provide, as a node, you could a Raspberry Pi, and it could run as an exit node, as a VPN exit node. So you could, it doesn't have to be. We support multiple architectures. We have facilitated Macs that you can actually run Apple Silicon, but we haven't tested it thoroughly. But so if there is someone with Mac and Apple Silicon that wants to participate in testing and getting them, as a node, feel free to join and reach out to us, and we're willing to give you a hand. There we go. There's an RTX 4090 for 4 cents an hour. That's pretty decent. I think that'd be a great gaming rig too. It's got 32 gigs of RAM, so yeah, that's not too bad. For 4 cents an hour, yeah, that's
That's pretty cheap. Yeah.
that's pretty
That's
cheap.
actually crazy to see because I know, like, and we were talking about this before we hit record, and we don't need to get into the same weeds that we were talking about, naming names or anything, but there's a lot of projects that are aiming to do a very similar thing to what you guys are doing, but just talking about it, not necessarily able to live up to the hype or the standards that they're
Right.
setting. So it's really nice to see that you guys have everything set up, a clean UX here, UI, so that people can actually start working with and renting out different GPUs around the world. I mean,
Yes.
props to you guys.
Well, and I'll show you, I'll show you the rendering platform as well, because I'm really proud of that. How that, that really goes to the core of what you call really distributed computing, um, because it truly is distributed. Why I mention this is, we have nodes located across the world, right? So you can see here a node in New Zealand, Germany, US, Slovakia, Australia, China. So it's a really diverse locations and set of hardware, and even, we support multiple different architectures as well. And a lot of them, look, many are focusing on NVIDIA, but AMDs are useful too. It just depends on the use case, right? And so, but this is a bit of alpha. I'll terminate this session for the Jupyter Lab because we don't need it. But we can stop that session, and so it'll stop the rental. But if you wanna, I can show you a quick rendering platform, and I think you might like that. So this is
Good.
this is this is Octarender. So this is what this enables artists to do is, and apologies for some of the names of this. This is our test account. So apologies for some of the names of the files. If there is anything bad, these developers, you know, do what they do. But this is actually being used already. This is live. This is heavily being used by actual artists. If you go to our Twitter feed, you'll often see we retweet from artists who actually tag us and say, "Okay, hey, look at what I did, and I used Octa to make this," and so on. But why is this unique? So apart from a ton of features that don't really exist on most platforms, we support various real things, and I could get into how we port over add-ons when we have an add-on that you install into 3D Suite. So let's say in this instance Blender, and it will pack everything from textures, videos, everything that's part of that 3D, um, let's say 3D file. Because often the animate, renders are really, you create something like a 3D model or a 3D scene. So you've seen even visual effects studios use it for whether it's advertised, whether it's for movies, right? Visual effects. You're doing a lot. So we have an example. There's actually a great YouTuber. Look him up. He does really cool documentaries. He's a massive user of ours. I'm trying to remember his YouTube channel, and I'll have a look in a bit. What his YouTube channel is, and I'll send you the link. But basically, all his entire documentaries are done through Octarender. He creates them in Blender, and then he renders them out, right? And then he publishes them in YouTube documentaries, whatever editing he does in terms of voiceover and stuff like that. But the point is, he does a lot of that using our platform. Um, and I think that's a testament to really, I often go to the point of how many projects actually have testimonials from their actual users. Not that many, right? And at least we can say, yes, we do have them. But let's choose an example here. So we have actually we did one here. So let's say we have this Ferrari one, and this one has previously been rendered. But what I'll do is I'll requeue all the frames. Um, and so now all the frames are requeued. There's none that are rendered. Let me just select none so we can make sure that. So now it's a clean slate. We starts with a clean slate, right? And what I can do is it's similar, right? We have the nodes that we have, but what we can do now is filter by Blender score. Um, and if I go to Blender score here, and often we use optics, we can see, okay, what are the highest scores? Actually, we have that mode that we use here. But let's say what we can do here is say, okay, we have 8 GPUs, but what if I want more? I want more. So here's one in the US, here's one in Croatia. So we can actually combine these two and say, okay, I'm going to have, I can add up 11 GPUs. And so if I click on rent, what will now happen is the render client will launch. So now you're seeing diversity of these nodes. The same node that we used for AI inference, we can now use as a render client. And it's going to run our rendering software. So when we go into, I think if we go into here, and we'll have to wait a minute or a couple of seconds, so I'll keep talking in between to fill the space. But basically, obviously, it takes a while for the actual client app to actually load up. So what you see here is the overarching Octa render platform. But then what it does is it launches down client apps onto each node that we've chosen. And so now we've chosen 2 nodes. It should appear here at any point or here. We have both places so you can actually see them. And there we go. So there's one that appeared with 8 GPUs. So if we go to list view, and now the second one. So you can see here one that has all these three RTX 4090s, and the other one that has 8 5000s, right? So now we have 11 GPUs, and we can actually see that in real time. We can actually see the statistics, and we can see the actual real-time metrics of what's actually going on. So now what happens is CPU is doing its initial compiling of shaders, yada, yada, yada. And we can actually then see the GPUs in action as well. If we go back to, I think it was called Ferrari, right? We can actually now see there's now 11 frames. So we've detected there are 2 GPUs. One is in the US. Sorry, 2 nodes. One is in the US, one is Croatia. Across those 2 nodes, there are 11 GPUs, right? But they work collectively like one giant supercomputer. So now what we're doing is from a user perspective, you can't see the difference. They are working together to render this one scene. But what we can actually do is, let's say mid render, we can actually go back and say, okay, hey, I wanna juice this up, right? So I'm gonna have a look at Blender score here. And let's add these. There's three 3090s here. I wanna increase, and that's actually quite cheap. Let's say there's another 3090 here. Uh, Let me see if there's any more 4090s because it looks like a lot of them are rented at the moment. There's another one here, right? Okay, that's a 3090. I wanted a 4090, but it does matter. So now I've just added these, and I can see they should again appear here. So, but what we can best see them on the actual render, because we'll see the number of frames that are being rendered real time suddenly get distributed even more. So now you imagine this: you now have one giant supercomputer that is one world. These are all nodes located across the globe, and they all act working as one machine and just rendering all these frames. I think that's a great testament to what, an achievement. So here you go, now 12. That's a testament to what really our guys have achieved and made. Um, and
Yeah.
you can do a real-time playback. You can choose which frame rates you want to play back at, because a lot of rendering artists, as the frames get rendered, so they start seeing these frames. Um, they can click playback and see if everything's right, because often sometimes you submit something, oh wait, I need to make some edits, changes, to stop it, pause, resubmit, and whatever changes they need. There's a lot more to this. We have a transfer manager. Obviously you can actually look at all the specifics of each node if you really wanted to, your sessions. I'm trying to think what else. There's a lot more for artists, but I'm not an artist. I know a lot of the capabilities, but once you start going into, you can do multi layers, you can do EXR, PNG, JPEG, um,
Yeah, it's
figure
been
out composite nodes, geometry nodes, VDBs, etc., etc. So there's a lot of complexity. The point is, it, on the surface of it, saying, rendering platform, I don't think people understand just how difficult it is to actually make this, because it requires expertise in such a vast array of areas, from real, rendering engines. Actually, yeah, we support multiple rendering engines, so you can do either Cycles or Eve, for example, and we're looking to incorporate even more support for additional rendering engines. So whether it's Unreal Engine, there's going to be Redshift, etc. We can support any, and we can expand that. But the point is, the expertise that's needed to make something like this is really, really vast.
it's quite impressive, like, from everything even here that you've shown us, like, the amount of integrations and different, components that all have to coincide and work together that you can just seamlessly exchange and swap out from is quite mind-blowing, actually. I'm curious on that note, like, if you could touch on some of the difficulties that you guys have had in creating such a robust platform. I'm sure people would be interested to hear, and then kinda get into the roadmap a little bit, what new features and what things you are excited to have now that the infrastructure is working so seamlessly.
Yeah, yeah. So difficulty. Oh my gosh, where do I start? You know what? What the biggest difficulty is always. Um, First of all, you start with a concept, with everything. I mean, look, I have over 20 years of commercial experience in product and project management. I worked in various industries across the world. If anyone's interested, feel free to pop over to my LinkedIn profile. I have a lot of extensive business experience. And look, our primary goal has always been to focus on growth of user base. This is specific. There's a reason why I'm saying that. A lot of projects heavily depend, and I'll get back to your point. There is a reason why I mentioned this. Um, but and this is the primary key, is what is the difficulty when you go into that? Is the difficulties are that you're now focusing on, okay, I want to make products that will be used by people, so this will be user friendly. This is extremely easy to use. So this was always right. Where do you start as a point before you define the product that you're going to build? and it needs to be easy to use. Then you start going to, okay, let's explore all these features. But one is finding developers is an extremely difficult task. Quality developers. Um, I'm blessed that we have an extremely talented team, but they are also I haven't listed them. We haven't listed on the website. There's a reason for that. There's no reason for them to be. A lot of them are taking direction from us. Arthur and myself are the leadership, but it has often been difficult to keep them shielded from a lot of the crypto stuff, from community, from others. There's a lot of poaching here, and you've got to also understand this is proprietary tech. This is an open source. We haven't implemented open source because we've seen the amount of. I'm going to be completely outright honest here. If many projects could just lift and shift this, they would. They would take it, and I would just imagine the amount of marketing they would do for this, right? If they had this, this is it's an extremely expensive thing to make. Or if I'm going to be completely honest with you, we've invested a lot of money into our tech. Look, you're seeing things that are on the surface, but then you start to understand the intricacies that are happening behind the scenes to make all this work, right? I understand people are visual and they're seeing this and it's just a UI for them. But the amount of tech that's going on here, you remember, we're now distributed computing across the world. As I mentioned, you're now using all these machines as one giant supercomputer, right? And hence, I often say we're a distributed computing project, right? And that's exactly what we are. You could theoretically use a marketplace for Jupyter, where you could rent multiple nodes and you could do inference across multiple nodes across the world. And you can. The issue with often you have is that you expect it to be slower because of the actual inference bottleneck in terms of communication latency. That's the only difference. That's the only issue with latency. But you could theoretically do that. Absolutely no problem. But the difficulties often were making all this work and fit together, make all these machines communicate. And that's why I mentioned to you is it requires such an in-depth tech knowledge across such a vast array from distributed parallel computing, excuse me, 3D models, rendering engines, actual understanding containerization, etc., etc. It's such a vast array of skill sets, and I'm truly blessed that we have such a talented team. But it's such a minefield out there that we have to keep them shielded, and that's one of the difficulties. Truly is keeping them shielded from everyone wanting to know who they are, who their names are, why. Because the poaching is also extremely, extremely rampant at the moment. There are many projects who are trying to find developers. And there are also even many scammers who pretend to be developers. So it's honestly, there are. I often see messages, hey, I'm a dev, I'm a blockchain dev, I'm a this dev, I'm a that dev. And let's line this up. We have a marketplace, we have and with that you can launch almost any app, anything, any use case. We have a rendering solution. All these are bespoke. We have a VPN, and then underneath that we have a blockchain too. So yeah, and we even have a bridge that you can actually. We also have a wrap token that you can have on ETH and BSC. They can bridge over, and we also have a bridge that you can use too. So we have an amalgamation of multiple different things here, and all rolled into one thing. And putting all that together has been a monumental effort. It really is, and we continue to build. What we're now doing is actually building out some of our own AI tools. While you can already launch some AI tools, pre-made ones I mentioned to you, such as Invoke AI as an example, or even Stable Diffusion. You can do a lot of that. Olama Web UI, Comfy UI, all these. You can actually. There's even correlation between. You could render something for Octa Render, put it into Comfy UI, and use Comfy UI to then add an AI spin on the renders that you did. What we're doing in terms of future, I mentioned to you, and we're working on the roadmap to 2025 right now. A lot of that's going to focus on some of the further AI development from our custom side things. So we have our own requirements of an amalgamation of various AI tools But on top of that, we're looking to expand some of our additional apps that we offer. Obviously, I mentioned to you also gaming, that we did a proof of concept, and we're going to look into expanding some of that as well. Um, there is really, really a lot coming.
I know.
Top of what we already have.
Imagine gaming on other people's computers from your computer. Yeah.
I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can run it now. Potentially, I potentially could. I don't want to. It would be interesting. I don't. I could do. Probably I don't have a lot of time because it takes a while to also set up. But you can. Yeah, you. That's what you're doing. You're effectively renting someone else's PC. Let's say you know Bob in the US. I'm gonna, and you can actually also connect your joystick as well, so it will work with joystick. So we actually did test that out, so it does work. But yeah, tech demo we did for that, and I think, but it does need a lot of work still. So, and some things will work, and some games won't work, and that we have to be realistic. There is always tech obstacles to certain things, but it doesn't matter though. I mean, we should theoretically support most games that work on a Steam Deck. So anything that works in Steam Deck should theoretically work on our platform too. So yeah,
That's
that's pretty cool.
that's honestly really cool. I think a lot of people will love that because computers are extremely expensive, especially like a high-end computer. So if they could just come on here and for uh 50 cents an hour rent someone else's computer
Yeah.
out.
So what a tip, 4 cents an hour. Yeah.
It'd be very, very crazy. Another thing I want to touch on while this thing finishes the last 11 frames after the 500. Okay, you ended it. It's all right.
I didn't know. I didn't end it. I didn't end it. I think it's, yeah. It's got yeah. Speed frame.
The fact that you guys fair launched the Octa token, you guys didn't have a pre-sale with any of it, and now you've had the blockchain itself going and people can mine and contribute to the network. Is the blockchain in its own L1 or are you guys built on top of an EVM or something?
No, no, no. It's our own L1 chain, but it is a fork. It's a Berlin fork of Ethereum. So it was before Berlin fork happened. So it's based on GoEase. But what the difference? Look, I actually posted something on my personal profile the other day. I'm seeing a lot of these, let's call them on-chain tech projects being launched on tech, on-chain, a lot of them on ETH. And I have an argument. Well, my opinion is that it doesn't make any sense to launch them on. I'll explain why. Look, when users are renting something, so let's say in this example, they need to pay what you see. With ETH, you have ridiculous gas fees, and they are unpredictable. Um, so let's say we implemented this as an L2 token, and now you're looking to pay in a token. You're seeing a price. When you click on, let's say, deposit, you now have to pay an additional unpredictable gas fee that you don't really know what it's gonna charge. So with our own L1, first of all, we don't rely on other blockchains because they could change something. We have to upgrade. We have to follow their direction. We're at their mercy effectively. Once we have our own blockchain, we know what's going on, and there won't be any changes unless we decide them. Unless we decide them. I apologize. There are people around. I'm sorry about that. And my kids, all good. And my kids were there with their grandparents. I apologize. I am a man. Anyway, um, so we're not at someone's mercy, but the gas fees shouldn't be an unpredictable element. I've always been an advocate of pay for what you see. Well, you get what you pay for. You're paying that what you see. The price, the sticker is correct. It's not the, hey, you have an additional tax. You have to pay the checkout like in the US. Nope.
Hey, would love that everywhere. You made that ubiquitous.
I'm sorry, but it's a great analogy because I remember I've been to the US several times, and whenever I go to the checkout and they go, "Yeah, the price is this." Wait a minute. What? That's not what it said on the shelf. Um,
It's true though. It's a pain, especially on Ethereum. Like I paid, I think like 50 bucks in gas fees just last week. And I was just like, okay, I need people to stop building on ETH now, please. Thank you.
yeah, exactly. So that the point I'm trying to make is, like, our fees are so infinitesimal. When you're transferring on blockchain, they are tiny. They're hardly noticeable, really small. And those are the fees that go into miners. They don't go to us. They go to miners, as part of that. But they are so infinitesimally small. I think actually I saw a guy on a Telegram the other day, and he said, um, "What chain am I withdrawing Octa to?" And he's seeing Octa in Maxi. I think he was withdrawing, and he says it only says Octa is an ETH. No, and he goes, "But it's so cheap. Why is it saying it's so cheap to withdraw?" That's what it is. It's cheap. It's meant to be cheap. Why should it be expensive? Um, yeah, this is the problem. Why we need to make crypto usable and approachable. And why all this what I've been saying, it goes back to one of the original questions you asked: is what issues and difficulties have you had? And so, look, we built things for users, for real people to use. Forget about crypto right now. We need to actually reach out to the average Joe to use the services. And that's what we've been really, really successful at. A lot of the users that we've had, they never touched crypto in their lives, but they have been exposed to a product. And we recently launched an on-ramp through Guardian, so people can use the card to top up and buy. You can actually, we now have both utility for main Octa and wrapped Octa on other chains. So you can actually do either. Now we want to make sure that we had utility for both. But they can top up their accounts now much easier with cards. And so, I've had many times artists come to me and say, "This is the first time I've ever touched a crypto project, actually used one." And many even ignore some of the aspects that we're a crypto project. They're well aware of it, but they've become so used to it because, look, one of the original biggest problems we had was bringing users to the platform because crypto is associated with scams. And so when you reach out to them, they go, "Wait, there's got to be a catch here. There's got to be something here." Once those floodgates opened, we're now in territory where we're gaining a fantastic reputation in the artist circles, for example. And so but that was one of the most difficult things, I would say, is getting those initial users to take a risk, take a blind leap of faith, as you will. And I think that's a testament, and often that kind of goes through my head when I'm looking at other projects too, is um, realistically, I'm not seeing them strategize or create a strategy of how to adopt users, how to bring users on board. I'm not. We do have a strategy to do that, and we've been really successful at it. Others will argue that, well, because you've focused so much on bringing users on board that you haven't focused on the crypto side. I disagree, but with being us being fair launch, there's another angle to it. We're not cash rich. When I say that, I don't mean we're poor, but what I'm saying is, as fair launch, we started with zero. We start with nothing. There is no pre-sale, no pre-mine. Actually, I used a great example. Somebody mentioned rendered token to me today, and I said, yes, rendered token started with 42 million in the bank. They did a pre-sales. They, undisclosed sales they did to, I think venture capital, multi-coin capital, for example, and some others, 30 million. They sold 30 millions worth of tokens as a pre-sale. And then they did another one where they had around another 12 to 15 million in pre-sales to community. That's just before even launch. And they launched back in 2017, 2018. We started with nothing. And we've built all this with being fair launch. I think that's a testament to what our core focus is on. And that's why we focused on growth of a product and users, because ultimately this is what's going to sustain us in the long term. Is once the kind of blockchain, coins are fully in circulation, um, our primary source of revenue will be use of services, taking a percentage cut from services. That's it. That's what's gonna sustain us to continue building and continue investing in the next decade or so, right? we're in this for the long haul, by the way. I should make this clear. I think many projects that you see right now will be here today, gone tomorrow. And I've known many that have also. I'm not going to mention names, but there are many that had promise in the past. They're still around, but they've become irrelevant. A lot of that is because they exactly approach the strategy of I'm going to bombard the market, invest in marketing, and they've spent all their money in marketing to crypto investors. They got that original pump in market cap. They've now fallen off the radar. Literally, they are nowhere to be seen. And now where are they? They're cash strapped to actually develop tech. We prefer to focus investing a lot of the money into because look, development is extremely expensive. I think I mentioned to you how much how many skill sets are required to make things like that. This is not easy to do. Not many. In fact, I saw a post by Yurichi yesterday that apart from Render, we are the only other project in the entire crypto market that has a rendering platform, right? Out of all the crypto projects. And we don't just have a rendering platform. The rendering platform is just one part of it. But
Right.
this speaks volumes to what we've achieved and being fair launch project with no kind of initial multi millions in our pockets. Imagine what we could do if we had, but we decided to be um, stick true because the other thing is there are not many fair launch projects in this space. Really aren't. We're few and far between. Really are, and it's difficult nowadays to not find something that is token based and they've not pre-allocated a bunch of tokens to them, have massive marketing budgets, and all of them are primarily focused on their value in the market for the short term. They really
Yeah.
aren't focused on the tech. We are on the
They're
flip side. We're focused on delivering and true adoption.
Yeah, there a lot of projects, especially when we get into the bubbly bull market territory, are focused more on the value of their market cap versus the value they provide to the market.
Right.
And so there's a big differentiator, and it at least from my standpoint with projects that I look into and why I wanted this interview with you was because you guys are focused in on actually providing a fundamental use case and fundamental value to the market. The rest of it will just follow over time as things evolve and move forward. This has been absolutely a fantastic interview, one of my favorites, especially with the live demo that you were able to
Mm.
provide with us. Do you have any closing remarks or things that are just you're dying to let the audience know?
Um, I have a piece of advice. I think the market is a bit of a strange situation right now, as overall. But I think projects such as ours, and there are many others that, really, really stay true to themselves, focus on what's important, focus what really crypto and blockchain was all about in the first place, the benefits of blockchain. Um, we will outshine and remain in place. A lot of them will disappear off the face of the earth. But I would say focus on research, make sure that you know who's behind the projects. They have a white paper, they have good tokenomics or good monetary policy. And if ideally, look who the backers are. If they have a lot of backers, whose interests are they working for? Why I say this is that the market is saturated right now with so many projects vying for everyone's attention. And a lot of them are being shilled, and don't just follow blindly shillers, right? Do your research. I know it doesn't get said enough, but please don't just dive in blindly because you will get burnt.
Preaching it. Absolutely preaching it. I really, really appreciate it, Tariq. And as everyone here knows, time is your most valuable asset. So hopefully this interview was worth investing that time into. Again, thank you so much. Anyone who's watching, check the description of the video and I will link everything so that you can come find and do your research. And from the sounds of it, even reach out if they have any desire to get in contact with you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're available on Telegram, Discord. I actually actively engage with the community. So if you have any questions, you'll actually speak directly to myself. I'll chat to you. no problem. I'm very, very open and very approachable. I think that that kind of, isn't a testament to the transparency approach that we have, and really, really want to have close knit community.